I'm Lindsay Maloney, and this is the Book Your Dream Clients podcast. I built a 6-figure coaching business while raising my 3 babies and working a 9-to-5, and I'm here to help you break free from the hustle mentality that's been holding you back from reaching your full potential so you can know your worth, step into your own power, and of course, book your dream clients. Welcome back to another episode of the Book Your Dream Clients podcast. I am so grateful you are with us today because we have a great episode with John Lee Dumas. I asked him all of the questions that I had in my mind when I started my business. So I think you're going to really like it. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Yo!
John, thank you so much for being on the Book Your Dream Clients podcast. I'm so excited you're with us today.
Lindsay, I am fired up to be here.
I have to tell you something. You are a disruptor on our podcast. You are the first male guest we've ever had.
Woo! I love it. I love breaking down walls and breaking barriers. Let's make it happen.
Well, this is a good way to break it. So I started listening to you years ago when I first started my business. And I had some questions that I had to tap into the back of my mind. What was Lindsay wondering and thinking when she was listening to somebody so opposite of her? I was intimidated to listen to you at first. You're very outgoing, and I'm the definition of an introvert. So it was like, you really pushed me to do things and push myself forward. So thank you. So I tapped in and I thought, what should I ask you? And I'm going to ask you the questions that I wanted to ask you years ago. Is that okay?
Sweet. Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that came to me right away, and I hear this from my clients all the time, is this is taking forever. When will it be my turn? So how do you encourage people who are just starting and they think that just because they have the website and the social media platforms, nothing's happening and they're doing something wrong? What do you say to them?
I mean, number one, I get it because listen, we all want it. Like we want that dream house. We want that dream life. We want that financial freedom, that location freedom. We want that time freedom. And the reality is, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody would have it. Everybody would be living it. And then it frankly wouldn't be special because it would just be how everybody is. And it's just one of those things that I always love to say is that the higher the barrier, the lower the competition. You know, putting up a website, doing a couple episodes of a podcast, putting a couple of things on social media, that's a low barrier. And that's why there's a ton of competition because everybody can do it. And a lot of people do. It's the people that figure out, hey, that's a high barrier over there. And I'm going to find a way to get over that high barrier because the higher the barrier, the lower the competition. If I can find my way on the other side of that barrier, I'm going to look around and be like, where is everybody? Well, they're still like trying to get over that barrier or they've given up. There's absolutely no traffic on the extra mile because nobody's taking that extra mile. And listen, just because you're busting your butt and you put your website up and you've done a few other things over a couple months, that's not going the extra mile. The extra mile is still showing up consistently and doing that in 2 years, in 4 years, in 6 years. I'm into the 8th year of showing up for Entrepreneurs on Fire. And back in 2012, when I was starting and I looked around and I said, okay, I see that there's a lot of people that want this type of dream life that I also want as well, which I did not have. What's a super high barrier? Well, doing a 7-day-a-week podcast, a daily show. Nobody was willing to even try to overcome that barrier. Nobody's even willing to try to climb that. And I said, you know what? I might fail trying to climb that barrier because there's a reason why nobody tried it because it's hard. But if I find a way to do it, then think of the reality, like think of the opportunity, think of the fact that I will be immediately the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. I will immediately be the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs because I'll be the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. And that's the route that I took. And it's still, even with that high barrier to overcome, it still took me 13 months of grinding to get to what I considered like decent revenue. And, once we did kind of turn that corner, a snowball effect did come afterwards. And now for 81 months in a row, we've been netting over $100,000 every single one of those months. So we've been very financially successful for a very long time. But man, it was scary at the beginning. It was tough. Nobody could see the future. You did not know the direction you were going, but I did know one thing,
Mm-hmm.
that I was committed to doing the first daily podcast, interviewing entrepreneurs. And so for anybody listening right now, what is that one thing that you can find that's that massive barrier that you want to overcome? Go tackle it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, and congratulations on all of your success. It's so inspirational.
Thank you.
You've had to have those days where you're like, oh my gosh, every day, am I crazy? What pushed, what was that? Like, okay, I'm doing it for this one reason. This is the only thing that's keeping me going. Because we all have those days.
Absolutely. Those days are still happening to this day. I mean, I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, today is going to be brutal. But, that's the reality, is that whenever I face one of those moments, whenever I have one of those days, I'm like, you know what? I could look at this as a negative and be like, this is going to be so tough. Or I could say to myself, which is the path I always choose, wow, thank goodness this is tough, because this is exactly why everybody else quits. This is exactly why everybody else can't hack it. This is exactly why I don't have any competition in the niche that I chose of daily podcasting, because it is so hard. It is so difficult. I just got done last night actually watching the CrossFit games, and I'm like, holy crap. Those people are on another level. They are training 365 days a year. And guess what? I could never do that because I don't have the passion. I don't have the desire. I don't have the skills. And guess what? Many of your listeners shouldn't and don't want to do a daily podcast. And they shouldn't, because that's not where their passion or expertise or curiosity lies.
Mm-hmm.
But man, when you find that thing, like those CrossFit athletes found their thing, like I found my thing, then it just, not saying it becomes easy, but now you have that North Star, and now it's just putting in the work.
So when did you decide that this is what I'm going to do? And you had to have felt really excited when you knew this is going to be my path, because we all have a different path. How did you get to the point where you knew that this was it?
So it was 2012, and I was really excited about the content that I was consuming. I was reading a ton of books on business and entrepreneurship. I was going to some great conferences. I was researching a ton of great people. And then I had to just ask myself, like, what's one thing that I really wish existed in this world that I'm now living in that doesn't? And immediately I was just drawn to the fact that I was always complaining and being disappointed with the fact that the podcasts that I loved listening to, the handful that were out there that were interviewing entrepreneurs, were only doing it once a week or twice a month. And that I was having to wait so long for that next episode when I wanted to consume content nonstop. And I said, man, there has to be a daily show. And there wasn't. And that's when I said, I'm going to be the person that creates that. That's the moment that I knew. And I did not know what the full staircase looked like. But as Martin Luther King says, you don't have to see the full staircase to take the next step. So I just took the next step.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Mindset must be so important for you. Was it always important to you? For me, I always thought it was some bogus thing, and I never paid attention to it until I realized it actually pushes your business forward. So what does mindset mean to you in your business?
Listen, without the right mindset, every day is an opportunity to quit, because you're always going to be saying, why am I working so hard? Why am I mentally taxing myself, physically taxing myself, emotionally taxing myself? Because so much goes into this. But when you have the right mindset and you know exactly what you're driving towards and why you're doing it, everything changes.
Oh, totally. What about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone? I know that's when the magic happens. What's the most uncomfortable thing you've had to do in your business that really pushed yourself forward?
A couple months into my business, I was being mentored and I was part of Cliff Ravenscraft's masterminds. And, I was just getting going. I had, a few dozen episodes were released, and I was releasing another episode every single day, but I was still pure rookie, didn't really know what I was doing, was still figuring things out every single day. And he sends me an email and he says, John, we just had somebody drop out that was supposed to be the speaker on the podcasting track at New Media Expo in Las Vegas next month. can you fill in for him? And I was like, oh my God, I am definitely not ready to do it. And I've never spoken about podcasting to anybody. I barely know how to podcast myself, but I knew an opportunity when I saw it. So I said, absolutely, let's do it. And I knew that I just would figure it out later. And
Mm-hmm.
man, I can still remember, like, to this moment, like, just pacing my hotel room the minutes before I was supposed to be on stage, like literally memorizing every single word I was going to say. And it was like so much work. And I was up there and I was so nervous, and I was shaking a little bit, and I was just like pacing back and forth. And it was just a really uncomfortable, struggling experience. But it was so powerful because, I realized at the end of the day, it wasn't that bad. And then I was actually looking
Mm-hmm.
forward to the next time that I could get up on stage so I could get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those uncomfortable situations are like hopping out of your old shell and getting into a new one, and you have to just get used to the atmosphere, and that it will always work
Totally.
out for you.
Totally.
Okay, so people who are just starting their business realize that maybe this is the next move for them, or maybe they need to dust off the old one that they've had laying around. What's your advice to that person who's just starting?
You need to identify your big idea. So many people make the mistake of just saying, oh, like, look at what Lindsay's doing, or look at what JLD's doing. And they do like weak, pale imitations of that. And then they wonder why they don't succeed. What they need to do is identify their big idea. And the way that you do that is you go through an actual process. I can't go through the whole thing today because I actually have a free 60-minute training you can definitely share with your audience. It's at yourbigidea.io. Completely free, 60 minutes. You'll get to your big idea where you really understand, hey, on one side of things, what am I passionate about? What am I curious about? What am I excited about? But then on the other side of things, what do I actually have value in? Like, what value can I give to the world? What skills, what expertise have I acquired over the years? And then how can you combine those things together to find your zones of fire? And then one of those zones of fire lies your big idea. And that big idea is then what you can go all in on. That's the focus. That's where you need to start. And that's where you need to get to. Because once you have something that you're excited about, that you're curious about, but that you're also adding value and knowledge to the world in, that's the start of your traction. Because guess what? You're not going to get tired of doing it after 3 months because you're excited about it. You chose it. It's your passion. But also, and this is the key, it's not just a hobby where you're just passionate about it. It's also adding value to the world. So as a result, you're actually building an audience around that. And that audience will turn into your business.
I love that. It's not about the money. It's about making an impact with the things that you love and just making the world a better place. Thank you so much for being on and sharing all of this with us. I know everyone's going to love it. We'll definitely put that link in the notes so people can go and tap into their big idea. Thank you again. I appreciate you being here with us.
Lindsay, it was so much fun. Thanks for having me on, and best of luck with everything. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Book Your Dream Clients podcast. I am so grateful for you, and I want to be sure you are a part of my free community. Go to dreamclientcommunity.com and join our free Facebook group. We have all kinds of cool things happening every single day, so don't miss out. Also, if you love downloading freebies, check out my freebie vault on my website by going to lindsaymaloney.com, selecting freebie vault, and there you can download all the things that will help you start and scale your coaching business. And if you're feeling extra generous, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode.